they refer to him as Two Coats, which okay, like
That's a good name.
it's a great name. All right,
If
like
his name was Tony instead of Tom,
yeah,
it would have been better.
like if you
Tony
get to,
Two
if
Coats.
anyone has spent any amount of time in a urban area in the Southeast, you're gonna hear a nickname like that.
Yeah.
Like so, I would reading through it as like Two Coats, and I was like, chef's kiss, like nailed it. That's perfect.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 26. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hench.
What is good, everybody?
Another one.
Another one.
I'm going to go ahead and say, if you haven't listened to our, 25th episode, the KDA episode, it was good fun. Go check it out. It's a little divergent, but we had a good time.
I'm a degenerate, so I had a blast with it. Let's do it again.
I know. Housekeeping up top. As always, listen to us anywhere. Follow us on Twitter. That's where you keep up to date on episodes. The easiest is at Podcastcore. That's COR. And you can send an email to the same name, the correct one, which is podcastcore@gmail.com. And then leave a like, follow, and a short review, and tell a friend to grab some gumbo, cut a handful of crowd ads, and listen to the Casuals Runeterra podcast.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Welcome to the South. State of the game. I didn't play much. And not only did I not play much, I didn't play any constructive. I played some expedition. Just had some fun here and there. Because usually when I don't have much time, I just hop in there, especially with the event going on. I wanted to, dip my toes into some different things and try to, you have a better chance of knocking off your quest when you're doing expeditions versus if you're playing a specific deck, right?
Right. Yeah. And
but what are you playing?
So the one I've been playing a bunch of really dumb things, and obviously playing a lot with the KDA cards. The one
business as usual.
Business as usual. The one that I've been playing around with the most right now is some good old Vladimir. Nice. But I am playing around with a deck that is Vladimir and Braum that uses the arena from Noxus, which is one of the new landmark cards.
Yeah.
And especially if I get the board state to be the arena and a flipped Vladimir, that is so satisfying because then it's just a kill spell and Vladimir heals himself. It feels good. Feels like value.
It feels right.
But I'm bad at building decks, so I'm not saying that I'm just covered in success here. I just it's what I'm playing.
So let's hop straight into it. The Bayou Bash. Bayou Bash, Tahm Kench, he did it. And once again, this just reinforces, we don't want our head to get too big. But Hetch and I have said a couple things on this podcast.
The Kench!
We've made a couple of demands, and it seems like Riot's listening. We're not sure if they're actually listening. But hey, correlation versus causation, brother. I don't know. You tell me.
Not only my trolling aside, but we got ourselves a nice little, kind of mini patch coming in.
Yeah.
What cards were affected in that patch, Brian? What cards?
I know one started with an H. Another one started with a B.
With a B.
And it rhymes with Gastion.
so Hastion and Bush.
Hastion and Bush. That should have been the name of the episode. Because then no one would know what we're talking about, right?
Hashtag and Bush.
I know, yeah, that patch is listen, I'm just saying we're getting it right. So just keep that in mind. If you're not listening, your friends aren't listening, you're missing out. And I don't know how you would hear that message, considering you would have to be listening. But we're going to move on. So we're going to start with the spell here, which is Shakedown. And I chose this one purely because of flavor. This one's just pure flavor. So let's just talk about the environment real quick of Tahm Kench. It's definitely a New Orleans vibe, down south, crawdad, shrimp, gumbo, that kind of thing.
Nolans.
Right? Nolans. So you'll see that flavor here. It was shakedown. The quote immediately got me. So before I even talk about the card, the quote says, "You gonna tell me where you got those extra kegs, Slim? Huh? Otherwise, we could play a little tug of war between your tongue and Jimbo's arm. And buddy, I ain't betting on you." And the guy's name is Wise Fry. Like, come on, man. That's pure flavor.
Some would even say that's some pure Cajun flavor.
Louisiana, fast. Now I want some Popeyes, man. Anyways.
Oh my God.
For you non-Western listeners out there. But yeah, so the cool thing about this card, though, it is a 1-cost burst spell that says deal 2 to an ally to grant 2 enemies vulnerable. Vulnerable, obviously one of the newer keywords that came out with Bilgewater. And the cool thing about this one is because of its low cost and the fact that it's a burst spell, it gives you a lot of lines of play to do creative things, right? It opens up a world of hurt to your opponent, and it's hard to play around when you have many lines like that. So if you can use it effectively, it's still a good card. I haven't seen it much at all yet, so we'll see. But I like it for the flavor, but it's also has some neat tricks there.
Well, the most that I've seen it has actually been very recently, and it was the last few streams from the Twitch Rivals. Because Swim at Twitch Rivals took a Tahm Kench Soraka list that ran Shakedown in it. And obviously Swim is so much better at this game than I am. It's a little depressing.
Well, let's not go too far.
But
yes,
he does talk about like how it's like he would be in a matchup where like both of them are trying to be reactive, and it's so much easier for him to just be like, I'm damaging my units, which I want to do anyway. You have to deal with 2 units that have vulnerable now, and I only spent 1 mana, and now you have to answer. Like it's like the card, like gameplay wise, is very flexible, despite it being something that hurts your own units.
Yeah, and speaking of hurting your own units, this is kind of a theme here, which is the follower I chose, also for flavor, Old Babs, Fortune Croaker. Which is, I guess, a play on fortune cookie. I'm guessing that's where they were going with that. But Old Babs is a 2-cost 2/3 with deal 1 to me on the play and an ally to draw 1. Once again, low-costed, decent stat line, gives you a lot of playability and also a card. So you can do things here to, trigger abilities, which there's a lot of abilities that trigger on damage here. You can do it to kill off things to trigger, kill mechanics as well. It's just has a lot of flexibility there. Wouldn't be something I would see played in a aggro deck. This more fits into not combat tricks, but it fits into mid to late game type play around stuff to get the ball rolling on different effects outside of her. She's definitely more of a mid-range. She's a catalyst card to make other things happen.
Yeah, and like the flavor on it is perfect because like if you look at the art of this card and you think of anything other than some voodoo from the Bayou, then if you think of anything different, just tell me what it is because I think you're insane. Like this is some good old voodoo magic, baby.
Exactly. And I put this here as a warm up for the true terrifying thing. She's like, she's like, hey, here's a little taste, and now we're gonna show you true terror. Here's a taste, which is Tahm Kench. Go ahead.
The Kench has been unbenched. Woo! Love it. All right, so. If it hasn't been clear yet, we're going to be talking about Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is definitely a very interesting as far as looking at from a lore perspective because he's one of the few champions when we look into what Tahm Kench is, there's not a clear answer. Yeah. Not necessarily like unlike Freljord where you have Anivia. We know that Anivia is the guardian spirit of Freljord. Like there is a definite answer. Where Tahm Kench has been around maybe just as long. We don't know, but we also don't know if he is a spirit that is part of the land or not. What we do know is that Tahm Kench has been living in the waters of Valoran for a very, very long time. And the only connections that we have to events happening in Tahm Kench is that people get led astray. There's stories all across from every which region that involve people who are becoming consumed by greed, and they get a demonic presence in front of them that kind of just eggs them on. And one of the earliest stories being a man who was basically Honest Abe for any American listener out there. But he was a man that could tell no lie. He was a very honest man. But even though he was honest, he was very forthcoming about how he wanted the nicer and finer things in life. And the presence appears before him and says, "Hey, I can get you into these nice parties. I can take you down Nolans into Mardi Gras, but all it's going to take from you is go over to your brother and you tell him one lie." And it starts off with one fib. The man lies to him, and then while traveling on a raft down the Serpentine, a fork appears. The presence goes, "Hey, head that way," and then he heads into Party Town, and then that continues, and he tells more lies until at the end of it, he's now the man who can only tell a lie, and then he's stranded at sea with no one else around him. And these are the kinds of legends that build the story of Tahm Kench. And he has many different names. He has the name of Tahm Kench from the Serpentine people, which would be the people that Twisted Fate, the nomadic tribes that Twisted Fate originated from. The people of Bilgewater also refer to him as that, and they know him as someone that will appear at any gambling hall. And wherever there is greed, Tahm Kench would appear. And then you also have these waterways connect through all of Valoran, so there are even names for him in the cities of Piltover and Zon, where they refer to him as Two Coats. which
that's a good name.
It's a great name. All right.
If his name was Tony instead of Tom, it would have been better.
If anyone has spent any amount of time in a urban area in the Southeast, you're gonna hear a nickname like that. So I would reading through it as Two Coats, and I was like, chef's kiss. Nailed it. That's perfect. And when we're talking about the tale of Two Coats, that's the first time in its lore that we really get to hear about a physical presence, instead of a lot of the older lore is more like a demonic kind of appearance. And but Two Coats is that this giant catfish that's so large that he has to wear two coats sewn together. And there are tales of him where there's a Piltover inventor that is trying to make his big break. And Tahm Kench goes, "All right, I can help you with your break. All I need is a lock of your hair." And then this continues on because he's making better inventions, but can't get to the big one, can't finish it out, and then ends up losing their hair, and then a couple fingers, and then a couple toes, and then an ear, until the legend has it that the inventor calls up Tahm Kench and says, "Please, I can't do this anymore." Tahm Kench says, "All right, we'll put an end to your greed." And Nom eats the inventor whole. And despite having all these stories, this is all kind of things where this is looking into lore, which is a lot of fun. This is stuff that's steeped in lore, because all of this is legends and stories from other people. And it's what is Tahm Kench? No one knows, and it gives you that whole spooky feel. This is lore steeped in lore.
It definitely gives us that Nocturne feel, right? It's the concept of these things that, we know Nocturne is more of an idea that gained a presence, where this is more of, it's a presence that has become an idea, right? Where Tahm Kench is like, people have said they've seen him, people have said that they know what he looks like, but his influence is so much greater than just an influence of a person, right?
Mhm.
He almost like dwells on weaknesses and then accentuates those weaknesses that are usually related to gain of some sort, wanting more of something.
Yeah,
And he
capitalizing on
pushes,
greed.
capitalizing on greed. And it's cool because it's unsettling, and his art is unsettling.
Oh,
He,
very
as a
unsettling.
creature, is unsettling, and they lean into that.
Yeah, and the
While
only
maintaining an air of looniness, like Looney Tunes, kind of with that whole New Orleans vibe. They play into it, that caricature. So it's fun.
yeah, and the only like direct quote that I'm gonna really take from the lore itself is the towards the end of just his biography would be the River King, the Great Waddler, Old Yon Belly, Two Coats. The demon Tahm Kench is known by many names, but all who speak them have learned a singular truth. No matter how alluring his words may be, in his mouth you will be lost. And as far as getting lost in Tahm Kench's mouth, the card.
They went for it on this one.
They went in hard, and I am gonna take a moment. Like, this is like to almost be a little contrarian and to be a little bit edgy. I think this is the first time, in my opinion, that I feel like they didn't translate his champion well.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that I think about it, like the way that his champion works in League of Legends, how in the world would you translate that into Runeterra anyways?
Yeah.
So it's like this one is definitely feels more like a card game thing instead of just a League of Legends thing.
Yeah.
But this card is ridiculous. So Tahm Kench is a 4-mana 2/6, and he has at round start create an acquired taste in hand. An acquired taste is a 2-mana slow spell where Tahm Kench swallows target enemy unit. It strikes him, and then he captures it. Capture being the effect from like the Demacia card Detain, where you basically exile that unit under the unit that's capturing it.
Yep.
So already just, thinking on terms of being a degenerate from Value Town, a card that gives you a free card every turn is some sick value. All right. Now, with Tahm Kench, the way that he levels up is that he captures 3 units, and then he flips over, gaining the +1/+1, and he still creates an acquired taste in hand. But when he flips, obliterate all captured enemies, release all captured allies, and then on attack, obliterate captured enemies and release captured allies.
Yep.
This card is some madness. All right, like this, like if you're going for the whole theme of like, all right, Tahm Kench is a giant catfish that eats anything. This eats anything. This card eats anything. It is ridiculous. And the fact that like it also is another fun way to include obliterate, which is a keyword that we don't really get to see too much of, at least in the most recent metas. Like this card is a lot of fun, and the amount of value that you can get from it is a blast.
Yeah.
And we do get to see that a lot of decks are even playing it where it's not necessarily just like an endless value engine. It's just more of a threat.
Yeah, it's disruptive.
Yeah, and the specifically myself, I've been playing a lot with this card as far as with Lux, combining barriers to get around the strike. But I've seen it a lot with Soraka. Like it's already showing just with the first launch of cards with its set that there's a lot of fun ways to play around with this, and the more cards that it gets, the more fun that you can have with it.
Yeah, it's definitely an I mean, we had no concerns, when we were yelling unbench the Kench with how they would approach it, because they've been doing good so far. So I'm happy to see this take form, and this kind of takes us into our question, and this one is tailored for you specifically, Hetch. And if
You
anybody's
monster.
listened to any of our episodes, if you're a new listener, go back and listen. Kench. Tahm Kench.
Tahm Kench. Unhetch the catch.
Hetch is Spawn, like a big fan of cooking. We talk about food all the time. And, you know, it would be remiss of me to not do a question related to that this episode. So what is your favorite Cajun dish?
Man, so you have opened a can of worms.
Oh no.
That you were not ready for. So if I'm gonna have to pick like any one dish,
you can do one honorable mention as well.
Yeah, like any one dish, I'd probably lean more towards like your good fashioned gumbo.
Yeah.
And gumbo, especially if you look into it like through a bunch of like nowadays we have like YouTube and stuff. Like back in the day, you'd have to have like cookbooks.
Yeah.
And gumbo was always just like different, and everyone's gumbo is got many different variations to it because it is your comfort home food.
Yeah.
That's a food that every house in Louisiana is gonna have for pretty much be going through it for like half a week.
Yeah.
During winter time. So it's one of those dishes that you throw in a pot and you kind of treat it as your own. You can have it be your way, you know.
Yeah.
Burger King, have it your way. So I would probably have to say like the gumbo.
It's like character customization.
Yeah.
But gumbo.
Yeah, and character customization. Honorable mention would probably have to be for. I'd probably will go with a dessert for my honorable mention. Bananas Foster.
Okay.
Literally one of the best freaking things you'll ever eat in your damn life. This stuff is so good.
I've only had it a few times in my life, and it's been great every time.
Yeah.
So I need to make that a more common appearance. So for me, it's so I'm not a huge fan of seafood, right? I'm not that picky where I won't eat it, but it's not my go-to. But for some reason, whenever I do go in that direction, I tend to lean more to Cajun style dishes. So mine is Cajun shrimp. Cajun shrimp is just something that it's like, it's an addictive type of eating where once you pop, you can't stop type of situation. Because you have one and the flavoring, the intenseness of it, the spiciness, and then just because shrimp is such a, like, as far as a meat, it's like simple. It's whatever you do to it, it becomes, right? Like it doesn't have any overwhelming, it's not like venison. Like venison is very gamey, right? Like it doesn't have any of that. It's just kind of, you put a shrimp in your mouth, you're good.
All right, you haven't had good venison. I will correct this for you
core,
one day.
At its core, venison brings something to the table where shrimp is like, yes, paint me like one of your French girls. And if that makes any sense.
You monster.
But yeah, Cajun shrimp is my go-to, and I could eat it until I pass out.
All right, so the time that, like, when we can survive through COVID, we're gonna have to have a shrimp boil, is what you're telling me.
Of course.
Like, you just come down here, I'm gonna cover one of the tables in newspaper, and then we're just gonna be eating like degenerates.
Dude,
like invite people, like we'll invite like friends and family, but we will give them a time that's like 45 minutes later than when you and I start. So they just show up, and it's like we'll just be like in bibs or shirts covered in Cajun seasoning, and just with like half a pile of shrimp shells next to us. And it's like, oh.
Y'all want some shells?
Yeah. Y'all hungry? We got plenty.
And with that, you all are invited. As long as you bring something. You know the rules.
Don't show up to the cookout empty-handed. We will kick you out.
So thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Take care, everybody.